back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys! So I am here today to talk to you about some of the books that I read for my portion of the SPFBO. I have 5 books to talk to you about today and I am cutting all of them. However, I read all of each of these and I definitely have some good things, some not so good things about each of them to say. So I would love it if you guys listen to my reviews and then let me know in the comments any of these that really appeal to you and whether you're going to go and pick any of them up if they sound like they might appeal more to you than they did to me. So let's get started and let's just go through what I read. The first one that I want to talk about is called Dames and Demons, and this one I read all of. It is quite a violent and gory kind of story. However, with that being said, it is a very fast-paced, easy read if you can get past the goriness. And this is sort of a dystopian world where most of the women in this world have been completely wiped out, and in this world men can actually get pregnant as well. So it's a bit of a strange kind of flipped sort of society. Because there are so few women in this world, the women are incredibly powerful and most of them hold pretty good positions of power in this world. Even the ones who are poorer still have like decent lives compared to some of the poorer men. And we follow 2 main characters who are brothers, Chris and Tom. I would say that this book is almost a novella in style. It definitely feels shorter than most of the other reads that I read for SPFBO, and I think it's got potential, but it certainly feels a little bit lacking in development, and it feels like you are really rushed through the story at high speed, which is both good and bad. For me, I like a little bit more development, but I also enjoy a story that doesn't keep you kind of bored or keep overdoing the description before you actually get to any action. So this one is definitely on the faster side of that, which is good I think for a lot of readers, but for me I just wanted a little more development than there was. There are a couple of underlying mysteries that our characters are working towards. We also have a world where demons can make contracts with people, where people can use their powers in exchange for other things, that sort of stuff. So I like those ideas, but I just don't think it stood out amongst the crowd. In the end, I gave it a 2.5, which is 5 out of 10 for SPFBOs. Next up, we had Thorphin and the Witch's Curse. This is definitely a Viking-inspired story, and it focuses on one particular family where they have a curse placed on them by a witch, and we kind of follow this family as they go on their travels. We also see a young son who seems to be the one who is cursed, and there is a big family wedding as well that we are following. It's told from a couple of different perspectives, but Thorfinn is probably our main character. I definitely like the Viking side of this because Viking culture is fun, it's interesting to me to read about, and I think that the blood rituals and feuding and fighting and travelling in their longboats was all very much interesting kind of storytelling, made it fleshed out a lot more in the world, and to me it felt believable enough to be a Viking culture, which is great. Personally, the characters of this story fell a little bit flat to me. They didn't feel as developed as I would have liked, and there are particularly a few characters like Willa who I just saw kind of snippets of their story, but in actuality I would have liked to see a lot more because they sort of had that potential that I was missing in some of the main characters. So it was a shame that some of those weren't developed a little bit further. The plot itself weaves between 2 worlds, the magical and the sort of real life world, and overall it has some fun elements as well, with like spirit guide kind of concepts. But I did feel as though it was a little bit young as a reader of adult fantasy. To me, this felt like it was aimed more at a younger audience than me particularly. So I'm not sure it would count fully as an adult fantasy. It definitely feels like it's more on the YA side of things, just with the pacing and the slightly underdeveloped characters. That's how it came across to me. I also felt like the pacing was a little bit up and down at times. Sometimes it felt really fast and there was loads happening, and then at other times it was a little bit slow going for a while. So to me there were a few pacing issues that could have potentially been worked out with some editing. So It's definitely fun. I enjoyed it. I gave it a 3 out of 5, which is 6 out of 10 for SPFBO, so it's certainly one I liked. It's just not something that stood out enough from the other ones in this batch. The next one that I want to talk about is one of the longest, or it felt like the longest, books in my batch, and that is The Serpent and the Crown. This is by Sam Puma. This book actually kind of reminded me in some ways of Robin Hobb's Soldier's Son trilogy, kind of combined with the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. And by that I mean it has similar ideas to Robin Hobb, but it's done more in the style of Robert Jordan. So if you like a slow-paced book, but then you have these weird ideas that Hobb would give you, maybe it will be your kind of thing. There's also a couple of things that are a little bit more original from the author, and that's people like the Ashtari, who are a race of like giant cat creatures, which I love cats, so this is always cool. Dream walking, there are drug hazed moments, lots of like trances and drug hazed and drug inspired kind of visions, that sort of thing. So lots of weird concepts, but I think done pretty interestingly. For me, it was mainly a pacing issue with this one. The tale is actually told from 2 POVs, so we get Giancarlo, who is the son, and then we have his father, Jorabai, who is kind of the other main character. And very early in the book, the son goes missing in the woods. He's grown up in these jungles and these woods for all of his life, so it's very unlike him to go missing, and his father goes in search of him. And their two storylines kind of diverge for a lot of the book, where one goes one way and the other goes the other way, and we are following their very different paths and how they hope to eventually meet back up together. Giancarlo is a very adventurous and frivolous kind of child. He runs free through the wilderness and just comes home kind of whenever he feels like it in the evening, even though his father has kind of started to tell him that he can't be as wild as he is, and they've had a few like disagreements about it. He knows it's nearly time for his childhood to end, and he just doesn't want that, so he runs free as much as he possibly can. When he goes missing, he meets a giant beast and he has to embark on a quest for it in exchange for his life. Jorabai is actually a really nice character as a father. He really cares for his son. He has been the only parent for a long time after his wife died, and so he has a really close relationship with his son, and he is desperate to find him. I think of the two plots, Giancarlo's is the one that gets going a lot quicker. It's a lot easier to kind of get invested in his story because he's on this big adventure, and things take some weird turns with his story straight away, which makes you kind of interested in where it's going. In terms of the editing and the pacing, I really do think this book needs some work on pacing. It feels very slow at points and very tedious at times. When that's done, I feel like this could be super interesting as a story. I also found quite a few sort of typographical errors, which obviously could be fixed with an edit, but there were more than other books in my batch. So I definitely think with editing this would really improve the quality of this book overall. The magic of this world is mainly through herbs, medicines, drugs, kind of that sort of thing. All of these give visions. There's also these magical mythical beasts, the Ashtari and the kind of cat creatures of this world make up a big portion of it. There's also different kind of beasts in the world who are like oversized animals who are kind of almost godlike in ways. Definitely lots of interesting ideas, definitely lots of potential, so much potential, but also just couldn't stand away from the errors that I noticed along the way, and I couldn't get over the pacing, which is too slow for a book like this. It really feels like it needs to be quicker than it is. I did finish it, but it was over a course of days where I sort of read a bit, put it down, read a bit more the next day, put it down. Generally, I think the starting and the ending were both really good. It's the middle section that for me slowed it all down. And I do think it has a lot of potential. I gave this one a 3 out of 5, which is 6 out of 10 as well, just because of the pacing. It really, really needed that work to get it elevated up to a better read overall. The next one I read was a very magic-based story. This book is inspired by a world where the city or the Fae kind of live side by side with like other mythical beasts like Puka and different types of fairy, different types of Fae. I like that concept. I enjoy the Fae as a race to focus on. I do think I personally like evil fae more than I like good fae, but we follow a good one in this book, and there are definitely evil ones too. So our main character is a young city called Lorelei. She has magical powers when she sings, but she never completed her training. She actually got into a bit of trouble a couple of years back, it sounds like, where she did something which really put her family against her and kind of lost her their trust. So she gets sent away to a monastery, and that's where we pick up her plot. She's been there for a while. She's kind of been doing what she's told and trying to prove herself. When she speaks to her family in the very beginning of this book, they sort of say, no, you haven't done enough and we don't trust you and we just want you to stay there and kind of get forgotten. And she's not happy with this because she's done her very best to earn back their trust. When a new person comes into her life and kind of offers her the chance to escape the monastery and kind of go on this big adventure, hoping to clear her name along the way, she seizes the chance and goes with this new character who is called Vanna. And they end up on a pretty dramatic quest all over the land, trying to uncover what's really going on with different types of people. The Order is the kind of religious group in this world, and they're kind of trying to understand what is going on there, but also there's all these small gods and different fae and different kind of people, groups of people in the fae world, who are all into different types of trouble, and they kind of encounter loads of them along their quests. So personally, it's a fun read. It's fast, which is great. It feels quite contemporary in style, even though it is based in this magical world. It feels quite colloquial and quite contemporary, which might work for some people. For me, it always takes me a little bit out of fantasy if it doesn't have that slightly older, slightly more distant feeling. But I wouldn't say that's a particularly bad niggle. I do think I needed more of a connection with the characters than I had. Lorelei is our main character, and although she's interesting enough, I don't feel like she stands out enough from the crowd to be the main character. There were other characters in the book, like Vandermeer and Wes and the magical sword that they find later on, all of whom I felt were a little bit more interesting than Lorelei herself. So it was a fun read, it was easy reading. I read it in about a day, so it didn't take me long at all, but I do think there was probably a little bit more development that I would have needed to give it a higher rating. So 3 out of 5, 6 out of 10 from me. The next one I want to talk about is Blood of Kings, The Shadow Mage. This book I definitely felt was a bit of a slow burn fantasy right from the beginning. It's divided across quite a few different lands and follows quite a few different viewpoints because of that. There's a blacksmith with a big past and a destiny ahead, mages and dream witches who are at war with one another, duchies and pirates fighting for different territories, and princesses with hidden magic. Basically, it has all of the elements of fantasy and kind of all the trappings to go alongside it as well. It starts pretty slow by introducing each of the characters and their plots and just generally what they're up to, and then it gradually builds up and up as the story goes on. The main characters are Thomas and Alice, I would say. They are a blacksmith and his wife, who his wife has been accused of being a witch, and attempts are made to burn her alive. So the blacksmith is very much against this and tries to rescue her. We then have Rosanino, who is the princess. She's married to the Jarl from the Pirate Isles, which is not exactly a match made in heaven, but maybe something that will eventually play to her strength. Duke Normand is a man with ambition. He wants to seize the land that is currently ruled by the Dream Witches. And we have Jangaro, who is a mage assistant to Duke Normand, and he is kind of constantly like the advisor. He's trying to find out more and more about this land that the Duke wants to seize. And finally we have Jarl Crowolf, who is the one that is married to Rosanina, and he is constantly fighting against the duchies because he is a pirate. The pacing of this feels like a very steady build-up. Like I say, it's a very classical fantasy in most areas. Nothing new, but it's kind of a tried and tested technique that does tend to work overall. The magic is typically kind of present, but not really explained, so we don't get an awful lot of backstory into how anything works, but we do see quite a lot of magic use, and there are different magic users who are able to communicate with magic. I would say this is a solid fantasy book. I can't fault it for being a solid fantasy book. I just don't think it does anything new either, or enough that is new to really stand out. So I gave it a 3.25, which is 6.5 out of 10 for SPFBO, and I do think if you like fantasy, you may very well enjoy this one. It certainly feels fun, and I just think it slightly missed the mark on originality, but other than that, I did enjoy this. So those are the books that I will be cutting from my batch for SPFBO this time. I'll be having another video very soon with the last few that I'm cutting, and then finally I'll have a finalist and semi-finalist video as well, so get ready for those. Thank you all very much for watching. Don't forget to support these authors if you like the sound of any of their books, and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.